Welcome back, everyone. Peace and love to all of you. Have you ever noticed that you seem to move through life with this nagging sense that you've left something unfinished, that there's still something you haven't done yet? Yet, when you try to isolate the exact root of this uneasy sensation, or even if you go do the thing you thought was the cause of this lack, the sense of lack, it slips away and it attaches itself to something else further out of reach. I'm not talking about a specific sense of duty, for instance, like I need to finish that one project at work, and perhaps after a lengthy period of procrastination, you feel that nice sense of relief once you've actually done it. No, I'm talking about a quiet sense that something is left incomplete, that haunts you no matter what you do. If you have no idea what I'm referring to here, you just cannot relate, that's great. Then perhaps this video isn't for you. This background sensation I'm pointing to has often been attributed to the neurodivergent mindset among us, and I myself am on the autism spectrum. But I believe that everyone feels this same basic underlying feeling, but we each carry a different level of awareness of it. And we each have a different perspective of it, a different story about this sensation. So I'm going to do what I do best, and I'm going to push past all the narratives, all the varying perspectives, and I'm going to zero in on what really lies beneath all the talk about this sense we carry of not being enough, not doing enough. And I promise you there is a peace to be found in the face of this sensation. So once again, get comfortable, smoke them if you got them, and get ready for today's episode of Conscious Migration. So let's start with where you are at right now. Let's step out of the metaphorical and the theoretical, and we're going to get real for a moment. Right now, I'm speaking to the person on the other end of this screen. I want you to just stop and step back for a moment and allow yourself to feel your sense of being right now. Just feel how your body feels right now. You don't need to do anything about it. Just be aware for a moment. And I want you to notice, are you at peace? Are you content? Or is there a sensation on the peripheral that whispers or perhaps screams in some cases, you should be doing something else instead? Or maybe you interpret this background sense of unease somewhat differently. Maybe you perceive it as a subtle sense of depression lurking in the dark, a black hole with no solid identifiable cause. Or you may call it a persistent lack of self-worth. I believe that many of my grandparents down the line simply called it guilt from original sin, for example, and they left it at that. There's nothing that can be done about original sin, so they just walked around like that all the time, quietly suffering from this background noise. And that's sad. We need to rise above this. But what if we could literally reach inside and pull this energy out of our core and look at it? What would yours look like? When I zero in on this sensation, it's like this angry ball of vibrating energy that won't be soothed by any means. It seems to consistently be saying, if you would just do that one thing, if you would just, achieve this one goal, or, if you just had fixed that wrong choice from your past, then I would be satiated. But again, those are just stories that I've thrown onto this ball of energy. This sensation we're looking at here is simply a vibration. And what we have to do is we have to practice sitting and staring our ball of undone energy in the eye. The longer you're able to sit still and bask in the flame of this vibration, the more the stories you've wrapped around it will begin to shed off. This is not something you're likely going to do in one sitting, by the way. So my advice is you also want to be prepared to have to return over and over again to sitting in front of this flame of Well, once we've released all of our stories about it, what are we going to call it? I'll tell you this, the Buddhists have one simple word for what this is. They call it desire. They teach us that desire is a craving that never goes away. And through our life, we each go about finding our own way to satisfy our particular craving. If we can move past all of those labels, all of the stories we've encased this uncomfortable feeling in, about what the sensation is, and especially all of our plans on how we're going to solve it once and for all. If we allow ourselves to sit with all the ways we rationalize this feeling and look at it for what it is beneath all of it, something amazing will begin to happen. You'll begin to see clearly for yourself that this sensation is not you. It's not essentially what you are. It's something unbalanced, something not at rest, which you are observing. I'm not going to presume to tell you how you should perceive this ultimate unbalance once you stare it in the eye, but I'm going to tell you what I found at the core. I find this ultimate sensation we're observing is a necessary energy at the core of life itself. To be alive is to be outside of a state of equilibrium. Once we achieve energetic equilibrium, we're dead. So in order for life to continue, there must be a continuous exchange of energy, a dance of energy. We're organisms constantly pulling vital food and air out of our environment and burning it for fuel. And I'm saying that, yes, you can directly feel that once you move past the narratives you've packed on top of it. And when you stare life itself in the eye, it is indeed much like a burning flame that, as the Buddhists say, is never satiated. Life is suffering. It exists in a state of being that you might only feel when, say, you're deep under the water and the only thing you want is that next breath of air. It's funny, most humans spend their life avoiding situations like that, but those of us who've been there in moments like that, where you're face to face with that burning desire to just live through the next few moments, we're the ones who know that it's at those times when you're actually the closest to feeling alive. And as I discuss in depth in Migration, that can become an addiction in and of itself. But as I said, we are not that imbalance. We are only watching this temporary imbalance play out through our individual bodies. This is why I keep saying over and over, the less you identify with these bags of water and flesh and electricity, the more you'll identify with that which has been watching this whole thing play out. And that is consciousness, for lack of a better word. And we are whole. We deeply know what it means to be whole. We've simply become temporarily confused by identifying with life. Life is suffering again, yes. It resides in a continuous state of necessary imbalance. But our true nature is not life. We are beyond suffering. And that's not a poetic sentiment by any means. I mean that literally, and I can prove it to you rationally. If this feeling of lack, this sense of constant craving, was our true nature, the only nature we ever knew, how could we know something was ever wrong? What would we be comparing this sensation with all along? This tells us that we intuitively do carry a sense of wholeness as well. We're quietly holding up our wholeness against this craving, and we walk around with this sense that something isn't quite right about this world, or about me, or about humans as a whole. The problem is we walk around afraid of death, when the biggest mistake was to think we were ever alive to begin with. We're so much bigger than life itself. So, in the end, stop watching YouTube videos and go meditate. So until next time, everyone, peace and love.